Hey, Baby J here with the Stay Fligh Podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe and like this episode. Share with any other cannabis enthusiasts that would like to dial in on the session, as we're going to be breaking it down on many different topics around the cannabis industry. See you soon. All right. Well, thank you very much for tuning in to the Stay Fligh Podcast, brought to you by Southern Crop. Today, we have our Director of Processing and Extraction, Jeff Spinder, on. You want to we'll just go ahead and kick into it. Just a little bit of background on yourself. I know that chemical engineer by trade, ice cream man by love.
Ooh, that was a chapter of my life, for sure. Chemical engineer is what I graduated from school with. And then I had the opportunity to get on with the world-class company, General Electric, where I spent 14 years kind of really understanding operations and manufacturing, learning some great skill sets like lean manufacturing and Six Sigma. Fast forward a few years, and I had that entrepreneurial itch, and that's what got me into the ice cream space. I was a franchisee for Cold Stone Creamery, and every day is a great day for ice cream. Yeah, did that for over 10 years. I had multiple units. It was a labor of love because it was a franchise, and so I had to follow the franchise agreement. I had to buy the products that the franchisor, stated I had to buy at their pricing. So I had to work very hard to, the restaurant industry's tough in general.
Yeah, my family's in the restaurant industry, so I know.
Not easy.
Not easy at all.
And then trying to sell ice cream in a neck of the woods that sees winter is not an easy task. I always say, I don't see families saying, hey, let's get on our gloves and hats and galoshes and winter coats and go down to the ice cream parlor. So there would be some tough months. And you really had to use some of those operational principles that I learned from General Electric to keep afloat. I was able to sell my businesses in the ice cream space, and then I was at a crossroads of what to do next. I first came across a cannabis roll, and I literally chuckled because I just didn't see how I could get into that space. But at the same time, I'll mention that I've been a cannabis user for decades, we'll say, since a very, very early age. And it's been a part of my life. And even though, as mentioned, I was in the chemical space, I had to kind of be a midnight toker. And always be faced with the possibility of random drug testing or once a year, when you have your anniversary to get your once a year physical. So I had to kind of work within those confines to be able to still consume. So that's why a little bit I didn't kind of give much consideration to the job when I saw it posted. But after a few days, it kept popping up on my feed. And I saw that the skill sets they were looking for were certainly, translatable from the industries that I'd been into. So I threw my name into the hat, and the next thing you knew, I was in Nevada. And I got to open up a facility for a notorious cannabis operator called MedMen. I don't know if you know much of MedMen.
I know of MedMen. Yep, I was actually on their website last night looking at some of their different store locations and looking at some of their menus.
Yeah. They kind of made a big splash in the cannabis space of being really big and bold and brash. And so it was very interesting to cut my teeth and opening up that facility in Nevada. It ended up being the first of what was going to be 4 other state operation facilities. So it was kind of a cookie cutter thing, and we were the prototype. So that was exciting. Got to learn about extraction and manufacturing and marijuana infused products. It really kind of opened to my eye working in a adult use market after coming from markets that had not even medical. So it was going from nothing, only black market, to now you can buy tonics, you can buy edibles, you can buy dabs. So it was quite amazing to be exposed to that. And Nevada, too, I'll mention, I think, for North America, I think Las Vegas is kind of the Amsterdam.
I know that we've talked about that in the past.
Yeah.
Have you been to Amsterdam?
I have not.
I have not
it's
either.
It's definitely on the bucket list for sure.
Yeah, for sure. 100,000%.
But until then, with Vegas allowing, consumption lounges.
Yep.
So it's I think as close as you can get, without having to
to the coffee shops. Yeah. And when you were in Vegas and Reno, y'all were doing a lot of new innovative stuff. So talk to me a little bit about extraction methods that y'all were going through. I know y'all were doing distillate. Were y'all doing anything else beyond distillate?
Well, distillate and or crude is really kind of an intermediate product, because no one's, for the most part, buying straight distillate unless they're getting it in a syringe or a dabblicator like we carry here at Southern Crop. But back then, there was typically just 3 solvents being used. You can extract either using cold ethanol, you could extract using CO2 gas, or hydrocarbon extraction using butane and propane or some blend thereof. Obviously, butane and propane are super, super hazardous and flammable. So immense precautions have to be engineered into those systems to make sure they're safe. CO2 is what I cut my teeth on in Nevada. Okay. CO2 is an interesting method for extraction, because typically your solvents have some polarity to it. That is, it has a little bit of a plus charge or a little bit of a minus charge. And so that's going to either pull or repel certain things that you're trying to pull out of the plant. CO2 is nonpolar. So if you can get the right density of CO2, it will take out the things that you're looking for and leave behind the things you don't want. But fine-tuning that density is something that still to this day is a challenge within CO2 extraction space. It is a great method, though, for extracting terpenes.
That's what I have noticed. It really does hold the terpene profiles a little bit better than ethanol extraction.
True. With ethanol extraction, you're taking everything out at once. With CO2 extraction, you're doing a primary terp extraction, and then you're doing a secondary cannabinoid extraction.
So let me ask you this. I've been meaning to ask you this for a while now. With our machinery, our distiller, our cold water ethanol distillate machine, we're primarily seeking THC. And that would be like kind of a THC isolate, but in oil form almost. Am I correct?
Right.
Do we have the ability to target other cannabinoids if we want to isolate them in an oil setting?
With ethanol extraction, it's non-selective, so it's going to take all the cannabinoids out. So we can't just selectively say, hey, take the THC out, leave the CBD behind. So it's going to take out collectively all the cannabinoids that are in the plant. So it's really more, the genetic side, getting, for instance, like our Ghost Vapor strain at Southern Crop is a high THCV strain. We can, basically when we're making concentrates or distillates, we're concentrating the original potency of the plant, typically 4, sometimes 5-fold. So if you're starting with the 20% THC biomass, flower, what have you, we're going to concentrate it to at least an 80% distillate.
Okay.
We can take it possibly higher, but many other cannabinoids, once you get to about the 95% level, it's going to be almost like an isolate. That is, it's going to come in more a crystalline form. But THC distillate, as you get it closer to 95, 96, 97%, it still stays as a liquid. It does not crystallize. If you want more of an isolate, you're going to take the THCA. So, in the plant, you're going to have all those acid cannabinoids versus neutral. So really, there's not too much THC in the plant. There's not much CBD in the plant. Instead, there's THCA, there's CBDA. If we extract those acids, we could then concentrate those that make THCA isolate. That's not how we're doing it currently, but as other cannabinoids get more traction, and it's not just about THC or CBD, people wanting CBG or CBN or THCV, yes, it's good to be able to have a way to isolate those. Typically, that takes chromatography, though. So we would take our distillate that is, say, high in THCV, and we would run it through a chromatography device. We would run it through several more times to kind of really narrow down the potency and get it so it's an isolate.
So let me ask you this. This is something I love to ask people. I probably have already asked you this, but I love to ask people that have your background. and I know this is a debate that's going on. What's your thoughts about solvent or versus solventless concentrates in the cannabis space?
I think it's the future. Even though you can argue and support that, hey, CO2 is not a hazardous solvent, and ethanol is, hey, if you drink alcohol, you're drinking ethanol anyways. But there's a certain stigma around things, and thinking that, hey, this cannabis concentrate that I'm consuming was made from this solvent, ethanol, that had to be removed out of it, or even I hear they use propane and butane. My gosh, what if there's some left in there? And people don't perhaps always recognize it. Everything that's in the legal cannabis space is third-party tested.
Exactly.
There could be no residual solvent, so there could be no residual ethanol, no residual hydrocarbons, but nonetheless, in people's head, they had that stigma.
Because I had that conversation with a bud tender the other day, and I was like, and he was like, yeah, I love live resin, solventless live resin. And he was like, and he could tell based on our conversation that I knew a decent amount, not anything like you, but I knew enough about concentrates to at least talk on it. And he was like, well, what's some of your favorites? And I was like, yeah, live resin's great, blah, blah, blah. Cold water hash is awesome too. But really, I prefer in recreational markets butane hash oil, shatter. I mean, that's a long time. That's what I've been familiar with for a long time, and I like it. And he looked at me, he's like, oh my gosh, like you like solvent-based extracts? And I'm like, they're basically the same thing as long as they are purged correctly and you have them tested properly to make sure there's no residuals. And I think that's even the bigger benefit of going into a legal market and participating in a medical market and getting your medical card is knowing that you have a clean product. You know that you can have that and confidently say, this has been tested. This is not going to harm my body. There's no pesticides in the flower. There's no residual solvents in the concentrate. So I kind of find that debate to be silly sometimes, because it's like,
in the end, it's a business too. And, cold water extraction is great. And that the concept, hey, I'm just using water, clean water to take it off the plant. But you're harvesting trichomes. You might be able to press that, into rosin. But you don't have the same form factor, variety that you do have with hydrocarbon. You hydrocarbon extract it, then it's the finishing. You put it into vac ovens, then, you want butter, you want wax, you want shatter.
Yep.
You have all those options with hydrocarbon. You don't have those options with cold water extraction.
Yep.
Likewise, you have very low yields with cold water extraction compared to the other solvent extraction methods. Typically, a third of the next closest solvent is what you're going to yield. And so you're leaving a lot of good cannabinoids behind. So you almost have to either, plan on losing all those cannabinoids, because you're typically only getting roughly 3%. So you start again with 20%, potency flower. You're only taking 3. You're leaving 17 behind. So either you're going to have to dry that material because you just washed it in water, and then have to do a secondary extraction to get the remaining and really majority of the cannabinoids out.
And I'm guessing every time you do that, your yield percentage maybe decrease, or am I incorrect on that?
Well, ethanol is good at stripping out the remaining. And when I've seen people do cold water extraction, they're going to follow it up with ethanol typically, and they'll typically get everything but 1% out. So
the people that are running solventless, then if they really want to get everything out, have to go to a solvent-based extraction.
Yeah. Now, if you have to buy all your biomass, that's, you buy 20%, trim or flour.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
Just to get 3% out. You're leaving a lot of meat on the bones.
Yeah, I didn't even really think about it like that.
But it's viewed as second to none in terms of the taste profile matching, what the plant was. The other forms of extraction, are you getting a 1-to-1, I can taste this plant in this? Oftentimes you can, but it seems like cold water extraction takes it to a new level.
There's one topic I want to get into full spectrum oil, but I wanted to ask you something beforehand. What was what was your favorite part of the innovation that y'all are doing in Nevada? Or was there a certain product that you were like really, really into?
In Nevada, when I worked in Las Vegas, my second gig, we did a partnership with a gummy company out of California called Plus Gummies. At the time, they were the number 1 and 2 SKUs for edibles in California. So with the licensing agreement we made with that California company, we brought that product into Nevada. So arguably, you might not say it's innovation relative.
Still exciting though.
It was innovation for that market.
Yeah,
it was it was a heightened edible product, and I was really proud to be a part of that.
Is there something specific about those edibles that's a little bit different than what we typically see in adult use markets?
I think they were one of the first ones to recognize there's more to the plant than just THC and CBD. So they have a lot of SKUs that contain other minor cannabinoids, and they've had those for 3, 4, 5 years now. So I think other edible producers are jumping on the bandwagon. They were a little bit more of a leader at the time.
And now that brings me into something that, from a sales perspective, is maybe that's been dictated by the market now. Is, hey, we've seen some of these companies exploring these minor cannabinoids, and we recognize the benefits to them in adult use and a medical market. And maybe the consumers are looking for that more. That's what I think, maybe, because I have people ask me about CBG and CBN all the time. But I think as a market matures, you see that naturally happen with the consumers. So to the Mississippi market, to the other new markets, do your research on your cannabinoids. Cannabinoid Wednesday and Terpene Tuesday is what we have here at Southern Crop to educate our staff on those different terpenes, cannabinoids. So definitely check them out. Definitely do your research. Understand the whole plant, not just the THC, because there's a whole lot more important stuff than just THC in that plant. All right, well, let's fast forward over to Southern Crop. So you joined Southern Crop, and I've heard you say on multiple occasions you feel like you've been really, like, this has been a great place for you because you feel like there's a lot of empowerment in terms of innovation that we do here.
I've been given reign here that I've not been able to achieve in other cannabis roles. In fact, I'd like to mention that I came out of retirement for this role. That is, cannabis can be a little bit wild and crazy. And I experienced that for the first 5, 6 years in the space, to the point where I decided it wasn't stable enough for my family and I to maintain a quality of life. So when the leadership of Southern Crop came to me initially, I said, I'm retired, not interested. But they were persistent, and they wanted to know why. And I explained some of the history in the space, and we kept talking, and they invited me down, and with a little reluctance, I decided to come down over the weekend. And once I saw the facility, though, I was blown away. Once I saw the equipment that was being purchased, that was, cream of the crop, state-of-the-art technology, sparing no expense to get the best of the best. So it really helped sway that, and then discussions of what I would have control over, innovation, as well as operations, production, manufacturing. It was a tremendous opportunity. So I took the leap of faith again, and but yes, it's been nothing but upside in the first 6+ months that I've been on board. It took about 4 months for us to get the facility going, and we generated thousands and thousands of SKUs to allow us to launch in early August. So yeah, I feel that the small core team that we had was very engaged. I love the diversity of the team. And I think the best days are ahead of us still.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, some of the stuff that we're coming out with from the sort vape formulations and stuff like that, I mean, I'm super pumped for it. I know that you're super pumped for it, and we have a lot more new SKUs coming out. So I think it's definitely been a very empowering situation. I mean, the fact that we can sit in an office and talk about something, like spitball ideas, and then we can make that reality is like very cool to me. I mean, very cool.
Yeah, there's not a lot of layers within the organization, so we all are able to, get with each other and put hands on right away, and not have to wait for headquarters or corporate or someone somewhere else to make a decision. So it's super exciting the way we can fast track things, and I think our soar vapes are proof of that.
Yeah, so be on the lookout for those when they come into market. We'll be using some of the more popular strains from our flower side to develop those specific vape formulations. And I mean, yesterday we got to see the wholesale team be able to smell some of the oils, and everyone was very adamant of how everything looked
Nice.
And smelled. So
yes, our terp library
terp library increases. So let's talk more specifically about some of the equipment that makes Southern Crop. You said, like, you touched on that, like, we've spared no expense.
So as mentioned earlier, we use cold ethanol extraction to harvest cannabinoids. When I've done this previously, you would buy extraction equipment, and then you would buy separately solvent recovery equipment to remove that solvent. And then you would have to buy a distillation unit on the end. And when you get done extracting, you're putting your solution into a container. And you're basically doing what's called an open pour.
Yep.
Those aren't always the safest nor best from a quality perspective, that you're taking process from a closed process system and now opening it up and then having to basically
pour you're risking contaminants, you're risking hazards with the product itself. Because if it's still a solvents before you put it through a solvent list, or before you put it in the process to pull those solvents out, you're still dealing with ethanol. I'm guessing there's some still flammability within there.
Absolutely. Okay. So the system that we have is unique. It's one of the very few technologies where it integrates extraction with solvent recovery and then downstream distillation. Once the biomass goes in at step one, the solution that comes out does not see the light of day, does not get oxygen exposure until it comes out as a distillate.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but we can process a few hundred pounds into oil every day, correct?
Our extraction capabilities allow us to do 300 pounds per 8-hour shift.
Wow. Holy moly, that's a lot of biomass.
It sure is.
And then one of my favorite pieces of machinery that I'm new to is the terpene module. Can you kind of explain what that's about, or how we operate, or what our basis is for the terpene module?
Yeah, absolutely. We talked a little bit earlier about some of the different extraction solvents used, and we touched on CO2, how I started with CO2, and how it's a little different, where you would extract your terpenes first, and then you do a secondary extraction of your cannabinoids. We don't have that luxury when we do ethanol extraction with our cold ethanol system. So to harvest those terpenes, because our biomass is just amazing. Not only is it super rich in cannabinoids, pushing 30% THC, but it's also very, very rich in terpenes. When I go to a dispensary to buy biomass, I particularly look for two things. I look for, harvest date, so that it's fresh, so that my fruit is fresh, my flowers are fresh, and that it has a very good terp content. And the terp content that we have here is typically 3% or 30 plus milligrams per gram, which is amazing. I've not seen that in too many markets. And so our cultivation team, props to them. They're doing amazing. So we want to harvest those terps out. So we are able to do that with our terpene module. The terpene module essentially is steam distillation. So a lot of other aromas, scented oils are harvested using a similar method, where you're running a certain low pressure steam through the biomass. It's going to take out those oils, those aromatic oils. And the thing about using steam, once you condense it, it's water. And the old saying, water and oil don't mix. Well, terpenes are an oil. So once it comes out in the condensate, it's going to separate out between the terpenes and the water. The water's sometimes called hydrosol for you tech nerds out there. It has a little bit of aroma, but it's still 98% water.
Yep.
So we've made some amazing terps. And like we just made Purple Punch last week.
Which is phenomenal. And smells phenomenal.
I think it's the new favorite. So I can't wait till we put our heads together to come up with some formulations there.
I think that we got some good ideas. I know that we talked about that in passing yesterday. But I think I'm very excited about Purple Punch and the Gushmint's road also. I'm very excited for
the Gushmint's and the full spectrum oil formulations that we've recently tried. They seem like they're gonna be something to continue working on.
Yep. So yeah, let's talk about, that's actually something that we touched on earlier, and I wanted to kind of expand on is distillate versus full spectrum oil. Like, really, what's the main basis of or differentiation?
It's really the purity. When you're looking at distillate, you're looking at typically 90+% potency. So it's removing all other components, phytocomponents of the plant, to maintain a very high purity, what the pharmacists would call an active pharmaceutical ingredient, or API.
Which is THC in this case.
Which is THC. I want as much THC and as little bit anything else. So that's why we're looking for a high potency, 93, 94. We've gotten up to 94% distillate potency so far in our campaigns. Full spectrum oil, on the other hand, is just like you would think in the regular oil space. You hear of crude oil, thinking that's unrefined, and that's exactly what this is. When we get done extracting and we remove the solvent, we're left with the crude oil. So it's very dark by nature, and it has more phytocomponents to it. Now, I'm not sure if anyone has talked about the entourage effect in any of this previous conversations.
Please.
But the entourage effect, simply put, suggests that we're all stronger working together than just one by one. So the entourage effect says, hey, the terpenes are important, not just the cannabinoids, but all the cannabinoids, including the minors, all the terpenes. Those that even go back to Rick Simpson oil or RSO understand that there's even more phytocomponents that are in that have medicinal value to them. When we purify that to get that THC content out, though, we're taking those other components away. So depending on what the patient is looking for, they might be looking for that full spectrum entourage effect, and so then a full spectrum product that has terpenes in it and not necessarily a 90+% potency distillate would be valuable to them. But others that are just focusing on certain symptoms that a certain cannabinoid can take care of, then it would be valuable to have a distillate.
I know myself, I particularly enjoy full spectrum oil. And the thing about full spectrum oil, got to work on my pronunciation there, is that it's very dark. So from a consumer perspective, it looks unappealing. But it's actually, from a medicinal perspective, more appealing for the holistic value than isolating THC in majority of cases. Obviously, there's certain conditions where THC is the best active ingredient to use, but encompassing the minor cannabinoids along with CBD and terpenes and everything like that helps boost the entourage effect. So don't take a book by its cover sometimes, I guess, is basically what I'm trying to say.
I think a lot of our conversation points come back to patient education and patient knowledge. And so a patient doesn't necessarily know, I need as high and just THC, as high potency as possible, and I don't want anything else. They're only going to know what their body is going to respond best to by trying different things. So talking to the workers at the dispensary, sometimes called bud tenders, to get that knowledge and information is key. Doing online research, but it's our responsibility too to help educate folks in Mississippi on what different cannabinoids are, what different terpenes do. As mentioned, we have Terp Tuesday going on, where we're trying to educate our workforce. But similarly, that has to happen to the whole patient population.
Yep. So definitely do your research for those watching. Highly encourage education, and that's what we're going to probably keep promoting here on this podcast. But I appreciate you coming on today and us getting to talk. It was very educational. And,
fantastic, man.
Thanks for tuning into the Stay Fligh Podcast. We'll roll that up and smoke it.
It's always a pleasure.